We're just letting in a welcome to Cuba, a Mecca of the arts with Jannelle Cortes. I'm Lisa Martin with Silver Spring Town Center, and we're so happy to have you presenting, Jannelle. We had to postpone because you were on a trip. You're a travel professional and a dancer choreographer with Groove Travel and Groove Fit.
Groove
So
Trips and Groove Fit.
Groove Trips and Groove Fit, right. And you're also one of our newest SSTCI board members. We're so happy to have you. Before we get started, I just want to tell folks a few things that we have coming up. Next week is our Tribute to America's Veterans Concert, our 13th, and we will have the Archie Edwards Blues Heritage Ensemble performing. We are now back into all virtual mode, so it will be live on our Facebook as well as on a Zoom that you can join. And we have some other veterans themed events next week, including new directions in the studio with Amy Bandel, who is an artist and Air Force veteran, and that is on Wednesday at 7. Also that day we have our Sparkle program, which is a hands-on art workshop, autumn collage workshop with artist Lauren Lay, who's also on our board of directors. And another special program that's always popular, we invite them every 2 or 3 years or so, is the Ladies from Freed, the female reenactors of distinction, which is an auxiliary of the African American Civil War Museum. So they do reenactments, portrayals of heroines from the African American heroines from the Civil War era. And they're just fabulous. So that will be on Zoom next Tuesday, the 9th at 7. We also have a theme of birds next month. If you got our newsletter that just came out, it's our theme this month is Bird's Eye View. We have a drone pilot and TV producer, Mike Sobola, who is presenting on the creative process and about his experience as a drone pilot. So it's like something we've never presented before. And that's on November 18th. On the 30th, we also have a bird's eye view through the lens with photographer Michael Oberman. And Michael's one of our longtime presenters, who's presented a few times. Most recently, it was last year in November on his recently released book, Fast Forward Play Rewind, which was about his life in the music industry in the 60s and 70s. And he was the first to host David Bowie's first visit to the US in like the late 60s, early 70s. So he's a great storyteller, and his program's on the 30th, and his wildlife photography is wonderful. He has a lot of birds for all you bird lovers out there. All of our events are made possible with generous support from Montgomery County, United Therapeutics, the Arts and Humanities of Montgomery County, Montgomery College, and many others. And now let's get to the program with Jannelle Cortes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Hi. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. And Lisa, thank you for inviting me to present about my experience discovering the diverse and artistic world in Cuba. It truly is a Mecca of the arts. Again, I'm Jannelle Cortes. I'm a dancer and choreographer that grew up in the Silver Spring area. I had the unique experience of spending 3.5 years in Cuba, and I'd like to share with you a little bit about my purpose, my journey, and of course, my discovery. I'm gonna share my screen with you guys. We are gonna be taking a look at a couple of my personal pictures, some video, and a little bit of an explanation about legendary artists, some explanation of music and the origins, and of course, dance, what I went to Cuba for. So my purpose, my discovery, and my journey. This is what we're going to go through. I kind of went through an eat, pray, dance moment, if you will. I also found love when I was there, but I'm going to save that for another discussion. So my first trip to Cuba was actually in August of 2016. By this point, I had already been teaching dance for several years and choreographing for different shows and events. I had a wonderful following, and I had some productions under my belt that most people would be very proud of. But I was starting to ask myself all of the existential questions. I think this is kind of what happens when you're approaching 40. And, I was asking myself, is there more? Am I doing enough with my craft? And am I doing enough with my life, really? These gnawing questions led me in search of new rhythms, new experiences, and new meaning. I guess you can say that I went on this eat, pray, dance, and I referenced all of the music that I grew up with. I was always curious about Cuba, and growing up in a home that was filled with music and dance, I would hear about legendary artists like Benny Moré and the Orchestra Aragon. But you guys may be more familiar with contemporary artists like Gloria Estefan and the late Celia Cruz. In my house, we always knew when it was cleaning day because you would hear azúcar, and it was kind of like a rooster call. When you heard azúcar, you know that it was time to get up and get the scrubbing. Celia Cruz and Gloria Estefan. These are women that, mean so much to me and how I grew up. They really are kind of like the soundtrack of, my teenage years. I remember my first concert. I was 7 years old. We went to see the one and only Gloria Estefan and her Miami Sound Machine right there at the Carter Barron Theater. I would never ever forget this concert. The image of her dancing and singing in a skin tight blue lame bodysuit will forever be etched in my mind. And there was so much energy. I couldn't help but feel completely captivated by the musicians and, of course, her movement. It wouldn't be till I got to Cuba that I discovered that conga, her famous song, it was actually an homage to the conga dances that are widely performed at Cuba's many carnivals. And I'll later discover in Cuba that Cuba has many carnivals. It's not just one like in most Caribbean countries. Every city in Cuba has a carnival. And a carnival is basically a long celebration steeped in African traditions and music. And you can be a carnival chaser if you want, which my husband and I did one summer. You can start carnival in Camagüey at the beginning of the summer. You can travel to Santiago, all the way on the east side of the island, and experience carnival. They actually have the best carnival, in my opinion. And then you can round it off with Havana in September. And Carnaval is not just for adults. Carnaval is also enjoyed by los grupos infantil, the younger dancers and younger dance companies. So growing up, again, Cuba was always something that I grew up with, even though, we lived in a Dominican household. My mother was very much into Cuban music. But when she talked about Cuba, it always felt like a place that seemed like a world away. So one of the first things that you notice about Cuba is its architecture. I remember being so excited in 2016 when President Obama visited Cuba. I think it was like March 2016 to be exact, and he went in order to reestablish diplomatic relations on the island. I, like many curious artists and travelers, jumped at the chance to finally see the birthplace of salsa, cha-cha-cha, mambo, and son. I wanted to see the place that attracted famous artists from all over the world. I wanted to see the place that attracted poets like Pablo Neruda from Chile, and of course, our very own legendary writer, Ernest Hemingway. I wanted to see the place with American classic cars, Guayabera shirts, old soneros playing on the corners. I wanted to enjoy cigars. Sorry, Mom. I wanted to enjoy rum. Sorry again. And oh, I just wanted to enjoy the sights, smells, sounds, and of course, take in all of the beautiful architecture. And I think that this is one of the first things you notice that when you're in Cuba. One of my favorite things about visiting Cuba is that unlike any other country that you'll ever visit, any Caribbean nation, I should say, you cannot just go to a resort. When you are in Cuba, you are in Cuba. There's no place to hide. You are completely engulfed and immersed, and you have no other choice to get in with the rhythm of the people and take it all in and be a part of it. So what the images that you're seeing right now are, that's the Hotel Nacional that you just saw, this beautiful structure. This home is actually in El Prado, along the Prado, and along the Prado, which is in Old Havana, you're gonna see beautiful homes dating back to the 16th and 17th century. And on El Prado is basically where the elite of Cuba used to live. And people would walk up and down the Prado, basically, strolling and engaging with their neighbors. It was a place to see and be seen. Let me give you a couple of seconds to enjoy some of the pictures. Albeit mostly dilapidated, once you leave the main tourist areas, you're gonna see the not so beautiful parts of Cuba. You're going to see the buildings that are not as well maintained. But there is still beauty in those buildings because for generations, families have lived there. And although they are a little bit dilapidated and could definitely use some TLC, if you close your eyes, you can imagine how beautiful they were in their heyday. So, of course, my purpose when I originally got to Cuba was to experience the music. And my first order of business after, strolling and getting my bearings was to basically dance, to become a student again, to take in the music, learn new rhythms, to understand the history through sound and movement. I just wanted to be a student again. I think I missed that. I met talented instructors and they helped me broaden my knowledge. They introduced me to rumba and the Orisha dances. And if you don't know what an Orisha is, an Orisha is a deity in the Afro-Cuban religions. It could be Yoruba or Bantu. I learned about the different deities and I learned how music and dance were so intertwined in worship. And the music told migration stories of the slaves that came from Africa's coastal shores. Rumba, though. Rumba was the music of the people. This was what was known as the common music. And I don't know what it is, but I love the common music and I love the common people. And it felt like everything in Cuba moved to this rhythm. It's the pace of the city. It's frenetic, it's jumbled, it's chaotic, and yet so orderly. Take a listen at this explanation of rumba.
This is the key. It's what keeps everyone locked in time. He's joined by the kata, which plays a shuffle over the top, a bit like hi-hats. Then come the three drums, quinto, tres dos, and the tumbadora. These last two play simple rhythms, which on their own aren't that exciting. Joined together, though, they interlock and form a melodic groove, which the quinto can improvise and solo over. Add the kata into the mix, and you're ready to go in. Traditional rumba, everything starts.
So what becomes apparent to me very quickly is that if I'm looking for music, I've come to the right place. Music and dance are absolutely everywhere. Live music, live dancers. You can walk up and down Old Havana and you'll see musicians going from gig to gig with violins on their backpacks, flutes in their hands, guitars. The sounds of chan chan and guantanamera are going to be floating from every corner. Walking around the Prado, it's not uncommon to see dance schools rehearsing or performing in order to promote for their classes. You'll see young flamenco students that are just getting let out of class, their little shoes clinking down the marble promenade. Along the Prado, you'll also see artisans, painters, and sculptors displaying and selling their work, just trying to get the attention of tourists that are slowly strolling, taking in the sights and sounds around them. I'm going to show you a quick video of my dance instructor, Daimara. I actually met her while walking along the Prado, and you're going to see her and her dance partner, Chino, dance to, well, it's an improvised salsa, a Cuban salsa dance. Okay. I knew that I would have to hit the escape button because that video was a little large, so my apologies for that. I will share my screen again. So every Sunday in central Havana, in the neighborhood of Cayo Hueso, you will find El Callejón de Jamel. And Callejón just means alley. It is a colorful alleyway filled with Afro-Cuban art created by sculptor and muralist Salvador González Escalón. You can just call him Salvador. You will find murals depicting Afro religions, Yoruba, Lokumi, and Bantu, along with sculptures created with recycled materials. From 12 to 2 religiously, every Sunday, the rumberos get started. The highlight, in my opinion, is the fierce all-women's group. It's an all-women's bata group named Rumba Moreno. And you cannot visit Cuba and not see them. So you have to make sure that when you do go, you go over a weekend, make sure that there's a Sunday in there so that you can see Rumba Moreno. On the bottom right, you're gonna see a familiar face. That right there, yes, is Jennifer Lewis. She actually contacted me because she wanted to come down to Cuba for a week. And it was my pleasure to let her see Cuba through my eyes and, of course, let her experience it for herself. So I was enjoying El Callejón de Jamal every Sunday. I was enjoying going to the Palenque, to all of the salsa parties, all of the rumbas, and all of the dance classes and museum visits that I could schedule in. And I was thoroughly enjoying just, hanging out with the people and, of course, having a little rum, having some cigars, having an awesome time. And I really was invigorated and inspired in a way that I hadn't been in a very long time. The Cuban people, I would be remiss if I didn't just give a word about them in general. And, they shared their stories with me, a very hospitable people. And I marveled at their resilience and ability to create when there was often scarcity of not just materials, but basic things. And it really made me reflect on my journey, personal and artistic. And I then understood, my restlessness and what brought me to Cuba. And I understood what I was missing. I needed to give back. And I was overcome with this sensation of being of service. I'm sorry. I often get emotional talking about this because it's really one of those, it was a life-changing trip for me, my first trip. And it really changed my life for the better. I wanted to contribute something to this artistic community that embraced me so lovingly. And I asked one of my instructors at the dance school about how I could help out if there were community dance schools that maybe needed, instructors. I was more than willing to share with them maybe something that they're not exposed to. Although, trust me, I later learned that, if you play a samba for a Cuban musician, he's going to play it right back for you. If you introduce them to any type of movement or music, they're able to replicate it with ease. But I was looking for a way to help out. And later on, I did have the opportunity to choreograph and teach some of the adult schools and also some of the children's schools. So going back to my conversation with my dance teacher, she introduced me to a school called Compañía Paso a Paso. Her daughter was attending this school. Her daughter was maybe about like 5 or 6 years old. And she told me that at that school, there were 500 kids, ages ranging from 3 to 19. And these were kids mostly from, really tough neighborhoods in Havana and the outskirts. And these kids would travel sometimes an hour and a half to go take dance class. The director of the dance school was a former Tropicana dancer named Yuli Rodriguez. She was a Tropicana dancer and choreographer for 12 years, and she did not charge. She taught in her home. She taught on her terrace, and I've seen that terrace, and you wouldn't want to dance on that terrace with the most comfortable shoes that you own. But here these kids were, some of them dancing barefoot, some of them with just not appropriate dance wear. And I knew that this was it. This was what the purpose of my trip to Cuba was. And it was to expose these kids to the world outside and bring people to Cuba that could be of service to them. And so this is how my journey began. I remember after my first trip, I came back. I was so excited. I felt so full. And the first thing I told my dance students was, guys, we're going to Cuba. We're going to go take from these master dancers. We're going to learn all about, where danzón, son, salsa comes from. But not just that, we are going to, share our comforts, our privilege, our gifts with these kids. And so I told everyone, in your suitcase, make a little bit of space. Let's start bringing down dance materials. Let's start bringing, ballet shoes, leotards, tights, anything that they needed. And that's what we did with over 40 trips to Cuba. I made sure that every single one of our groove trips, we brought down materials and things for the kids so that they could learn a little more comfortably. So I'm going to play a video for you guys of the kids of Paso a Paso. Luckily, I am not the only person that has met these amazing kids in this awesome dance company. There was a jewelry company in Miami who, went down and also expressed that they wanted to help the kids. And in return, the kids filmed a really cool promo video for them. So here's their video. Sorry, it's a long video. So if you guys want the link, I can send it to you later. So I just wanted to move on to different dance schools that I eventually got involved with. So after quite a few of these trips back and forth to Cuba and assisting these dance schools in the best way that I could, excuse me, a very good friend of mine, Jamila Sharif, who was a designer for Capizio at the time, got word of what I was doing, bringing down materials and dance goods to these different dance schools. And so Jamila said that she wanted to help out in any way that she could. So she had me meet with the headquarters of Capizio, which I'm sure a lot of you guys know is one of the lead dance apparel companies in the world. And I met with them at their headquarters, and I showed them videos of the kids of Paso a Paso and a couple of other dance schools that I'm going to show you videos of. And they agreed that they wanted to help. They made me the brand ambassador to Cuba, one of their brand ambassadors to Cuba, and I was going to help them bring down dance materials. I don't really know all of the politics and I don't want to really get into it, but it is difficult to get items on a large scale down there. So basically what we were doing was just using my trips as a way to bring down small amounts of items. So I'm going to play this video of the Ballet Nacional de Cuba. This is a school that Capizio directly got involved with and introduced me to in order to assist getting point shoes to their dancers. The next school that I'm going to show you a short clip of is the Rosario Cardenas Contemporary Dance Company. Rosario Cardenas is a force. To meet her is to absolutely love her. She certainly pushes the envelope, is not a conservative choreographer by any means, but she is truly a leader in contemporary dance. She very notably attained a residency for her dance company at the Joyce Theater in New York City. They have performed at Lincoln Center. They've performed at the Kennedy Center. They have performed all over the world. And this guy needs no introduction, Carlos Acosta. Although I do not have an affiliation with this dance company, I did want to show you a snippet because he really is one of the modern voices, one of the strongest voices really coming out of the Cuban dance scene at the moment. He very notably, maybe about a year or so ago, became the director of the Royal Ballet in the United Kingdom, the first Cuban to ever do so.
I wanted to create a company that doesn't quite look like any other company in the nation, who offers something more alternative, and basically a company that embraces all art form or dance forms, you know, that you could dance something in point, you could dance something very avant-garde contemporary, maybe some folkloric elements, and always from a Cuban perspective. First of all, I wanted to help Cuba. I wanted to help my nation. Cuba has a larger potential. So I wanted to create my company to add to that so that it could contribute to the artistic scene in the nation. And so the repertoire that I'm looking for, it's diverse, it's something that doesn't look like anything out there. I will use choreography for all around the world, and also I'm eager to boost the national talent. I want.
So this dance company right here, Raíces Profundas, was started by one of the founding members of the National Folkloric Company of Cuba. This is Juan Morejon's dance company, Raíces Profundas. So what they're performing right now are the Orisha dances. So these are dances that depict the deities, Ogun, Elegua, Oshun, Yemaya, and you don't have to be male or female to do any of these dances, although some of them have a little more masculine energy and others more feminine. second to last, we have someone, List Alfonso. You think of Spain and you think flamenco, but I was really in awe of the flamenco scene in Cuba. So I just wanted to share this with you. Although again, we are not affiliated with this company, but I think it's important to see the diversity in dance, in visual arts. And the last video that I'm going to show you guys, oops, sorry. The last video that I'm going to show you guys is actually of the National Folkloric Company of Cuba. Very much like the Ballet Nacional of Cuba, this dance company is also funded by the government, and they travel the world over. They really are leaders in folkloric dance. What's really beautiful about the video that I'm going to show you is that they are not performing on stage. What you're going to see are former dance members that are dispersed all over the world for whatever reason. They left their homeland. Some of the people that you're going to see are actually still in Cuba. And we all know that the last 2 years was very difficult, and a lot of us kept in contact and kept our bodies moving via Zoom. And I just wanted to show all of these former members, doing their old repertoire, dancing together. And it really shows that no matter what circumstances keep us apart, that dance and music can bring us together.
Simbraco arriba malo, yo llama, Simbraco ya son las horas, pongo yo llama, Simbraco arriba malo, llama, Simbraco riumbero, yo llama, Simbraco arriba malo, yo llama, Simbraco ya son las horas, yo llama, Simbraco arriba malo, yo llama, Simbraco derechito, yo llama, Simbraco arriba malo, yo llama, Simbraco riumbero, llama, Simbraco arriba palo, yo llama, Simbraco ya son las horas, yo llama, Simbraco arriba palo, yo llama, Simbraco arriba palo, yo llama, Simbraco riumbero, yo llama, Simbraco arriba palo, yo llama, Simbraco derechito, yo llama, Simbraco arriba palo, yo llama, ganga yo va, ¿quién me lleva? Ganga yo va, son las horas, ganga yo va, la sabana, ganga yo va, riumbero, 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 ganga yo va, yo alangaraba, alangarulendo, yo alangarulendo, alangarabato, yo alangarulendo. Yo arangarabato, yo alangarulendo, yo alangarulendo, arangarabato, alangarulendo, alangarabato, yo alangarulendo, alangarulendo, yo alangarulendo, alangarabato, yo alangarulendo, alangarulendo, yo alangarulendo.
I think you guys get the picture. So this concludes my presentation on Cuba, and my conclusion that it is truly a Mecca for the arts and of the arts. I get a little emotional, so pardon me if my voice cracked a little bit, and I got a little teary-eyed. I haven't really written or documented any of my experience in Cuba, and I was truly frightened because I didn't know where to begin, and I really experienced so much, and it was kind of hard to filter through and compartmentalize exactly what order things were going to go in. So I appreciate you joining me today, and I hope that you also enjoyed all of the videos and pictures and a little bit of my journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jannelle. That was really wonderful. And you make me want to go all the more. And I want to go with you to Cuba. So
I'm just glad I wasn't boohooing like I was while I was putting this together. I definitely had a few cathartic moments.
Right. I can see it's a very, such a deep emotional experience to
Absolutely.
get to know all the people. Amazing
I think
talent.
also because, what we've experienced in the last 2 years, and my husband and I have not been able to go back to Cuba since March 13th, 2020. And, you worry about people that you don't see, as we all know. And it feels like, if it felt like a world away before, now it really feels like it's on another planet. So.
Great. Yeah. But it's so close to us here.
It's so close.
Thankfully, it's getting easier to visit there. And I know we have some people on the call who've been to Cuba, even some real Cubans on the call. So happy to have Humberto Rodriguez and maybe his wife. They're on the call watching, and they were writing to me that they're really enjoying it. So I think Roseanne, Humberto, are you there?
Where are you?
Hello, Humberto. This is Jannelle. I don't know.
Yes, hi. ¿Cómo está, Jannelle? Un placer.
Muy bien. You're the infamous
muy bonito. Felicidades. Muy lindo.
Muchas gracias.
Muy lindo.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope you got a little bit nostalgic, but not too emotional like me.
You did a beautiful job capturing the spirit that can only be shown through dance. So just absolutely, absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
I'm so happy you enjoyed it.
And Roseanne Skirble had wrote to me and said she has some questions.
Of course.
Roseanne,
I just wanted to thank you. That was terrific. You did a great job.
Thank you.
I have a number of questions. First of all, what about your own cultural roots with Cortés? Or you mentioned briefly in passing about that it was that your parents or your family is Dominican. And so is that where you get your Spanish?
Yeah, no. So I was born in the Dominican Republic, and I came here at the age of 3. And I was one of those people that was very lucky to be able to go back to the Dominican Republic and spend my summers there. So I had a really fun, childhood, being able to go back and run around and listen to, grow up with this amazing merengue music and bachata. And so when I went to Cuba, I really felt at home, because there are a lot of similarities. We have a colonial part of La Zona Colonial, which is in Santo Domingo. And so some of the colonial zone looks like Old Havana. So there are some similarities there, but Old Havana is huge, and you can fit quite a few zona coloniales in there. But they also have a malecón, which is, I don't know if you've seen the picture of that big seawall. And the one in Havana is actually, I think, 9 kilometers. So what's that? Oh my gosh, like 4 miles or 4.5 miles? I don't know. I never get the conversion right. But so there are a lot of similarities as far as the food, the architecture, of course, the music, the language being there. But of course, things that are very particular to Cuba. And I feel like the Dominican Republic, there has been a fusion of American culture where really in Cuba, there is not that.
Just one other thing. Through your talk, you talked about really, the beauty, but also the challenges of really actually doing this work, and that you had to, your company was able to bring in their 40 trips all this dancing equipment. But I guess the larger question is, do you see anything within the cultural world, collaboration from nonprofit to nonprofit in the United States and in the, with Cuba, and also, in the video in which that you showed of the kids, were they wearing the t-shirt of the jewelry company? I don't know if the government would frown on something like that, or they didn't notice it or couldn't read it, or I mean, I don't know. I mean, it seems like it's really complicated, and it shouldn't be, because
this is a recorded conversation, right? Well, the thing is that yes, technically, any type of donations are frowned upon. And that's why when Capizio approached me, they were trying to send down 1,000 toe shoes, point shoes, to the Ballet Nacional de Cuba. Because if you see some of the shoes that these dancers are dancing with, I used to dance ballet, and my mom will tell you she had to buy me point shoes almost on a monthly basis, because when you're dancing point, you are destroying those shoes. And they use those shoes way past the time of expiration. And so Capizio was really, trying to send stuff down, and it was just being blocked. I mean, they were even trying to send it from their headquarters in Italy, and they weren't able to get it through. So it is a challenge. And I think a lot of nonprofit organizations want to help. I know plenty of people and organizations that want to help, but I think that there's this fear that they're going to get in trouble. And I can understand that fear. But I think that doing it on a micro level, if you're bringing down a couple of shoes or you're bringing something like that, and that's really what my students and myself did. It was a very piecemeal type of thing, but every little bit helped,
So it was people to people, small.
It was very much people to people. It is very difficult for a big organization to try to do a big haul and take down there. And money is definitely frowned upon. So money is not something that you should be exchanging or anything like that.
So you didn't have any problems, with the government when you were down there? I'm just curious.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I feel like the issue is really more on this end. I didn't really experience any issues there. I got all the questions when I came back to the States. And luckily I just had my global entry interview. And of course, the first thing they asked me about was Cuba. And thankfully I brought back a Cuban souvenir, my husband. And I was like, I was visiting my husband, and that was that.
I'll let somebody else ask some questions. Thank you.
Great. We have time for a few more questions. I actually have one while people are, if you want to let us know if you have a question, you can message me or just put your hand up. I was curious about two things. At the very last act was in Yoruban language, a mix of Yoruban and Spanish. Yes. Do you know what they were saying?
No.
Okay.
I have no idea. Was it the National Folkloric Company?
Right, at the very end. The very last, they were doing the call outs.
Oh yeah, and usually, yes, a lot of those songs, and also in rumba and in folkloric music, a lot of it is very call and response. So even as music started to evolve in the early 19th century with danzón coming about, a lot of that music was also call and response. A lot of Benny Moré's repertoire is that, calling out to the audience, and either the audience singing back to him or the orchestra singing back to him. So it's interesting how that has, that did evolve over time.
That has roots in West Africa.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So, and another part of the world that I think has had some influence on Cuban culture too, at least in the last 50 years, perhaps, is Russia. And so when you showed the ballet, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the former Soviet Union in Estonia. So I've been to Russia a few times and been to the ballet there as well as here. But I'm wondering how much, do you know if Russian ballet dancers collaborate much with Cuban?
Very much so, very much so. So ballet, even before the revolution, was a big deal in Cuba. And so you have to remember that Cuba before the 50s was very much like the Vegas of the Caribbean, the Paris of the Caribbean. So all of those images of the really beautiful architectural like buildings, the ones that have been preserved, because maybe they're like the National Theater or they're like this old embassy or something like that. Back in the days, it all looked like that, you know? So, and it was, opera was really big, ballet was really big. But unfortunately, and this is what they say, is that though that ballet company was not very well funded, really until Castro came along, and supposedly he's the one that said, okay, we're gonna fund this company, give it what it needs, make Alicia Alonso kind of like our, I don't know, Dorothy Hamill or or whatever. She's like the prima ballerina of the country. And, you know, they made sure that they named the National Theater after her, that the National Ballet was able to rehearse there. And to this day, they still perform there.
Okay.
So, and yes, very heavily influenced by the relationship that Castro had with the Russians. So you would have this exchange of dance and culture.
Well, in my years in the former Soviet Union, we did not see any sign of Cuban culture or arts, but we did ride in old buses that were made in Cuba. It was very interesting. I see that Saul has a question. I will ask him. Saul Brody.
Hello. Thanks for your presentation. I posted in the chat earlier a whole thing about Lisa, about speaking of Alicia Alonso. There was a film, I believe, on PBS, may have been in their POV series, about Alicia's sister who left Cuba shortly after the revolution for Philadelphia, as a matter of fact, where I live. And it's about their relationship, and the film follows their reunion in Havana many decades later. It's a very interesting film. I'd be interested in learning the name of it. I've forgotten if anybody knows about it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you know the name, to put it in the chat, but I will definitely look for that. I'd be interested in seeing it myself. I see Riamberto's comment said that Alicia Alonso and Carlos Acosta have made it clear that they taught the Russians, not the other way around.
Particularly Alicia Alonso made it real clear that they were welcome, the Russians were welcome to learn, but it's a little bit of Cuban pride there. So, and I think Carlos Acosta has picked up on that. They don't want people to say that the Russians taught them. It's the other way around.
No, absolutely. And I think that, that's why I made sure to mention that ballet was a big deal way before the revolution, that, this was the national dance, of course, that and the folkloric dances.
Okay.
Does anyone else have a question?
Great. Yes, Aida has a question.
I think I saw the film, and I don't think it was Alicia Alonso, but there were two sisters who were dancers, and one was outside of Philadelphia, actually had a school. And what was amazing to me about the film is that when they were reunited in Cuba, what I remember was that they were both watching some students practicing. And the film caught how they had the two sisters who hadn't seen each other for decades.
That was the National Ballet, Ballet Nacional de Cuba, So I'm pretty sure it was Alicia Alonso.
Okay, I don't want to dispute that, but do
Okay.
you remember the scene in the movie when the two sisters were reunited and they were watching the dancers in Cuba and they were responding to the dancers physically very similarly with the same body
I
manner?
do remember that very well.
I thought that was amazing because, I mean, their bodies kind of respond, like with their heads or their hands, they were like in unison and they were not aware of it. It was a camera that caught that.
Well, it looks like everybody's going to be Googling, trying to Googling various keywords to see if we can find out what film that is.
Yeah, I'll try and look, and if I see it, I'll definitely send it to Lisa so that she can share it with everyone.
And I will look for, I'll Google on the PBS app and see if I can find it on there and send it to Lisa if I find it.
Awesome.
Okay, great.
This is Carlos speaking.
Carlos.
Hi, good night, everybody. Unfortunately, I did not see this until about 20 minutes ago, so I'm just catching the last 20. I was just wondering whether this is going to be made available, the presentation.
Yes, we did record it, so we will make it available.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But not necessarily right away. We try not to record. We try to encourage our audiences to take part in our live programs and not give them the option of watching later, because then they put it off and then they don't even get to see it, or they see it later. And it's much nicer to have you all here with us.
No, and I understand that. I wish I had seen it from the beginning. I'm from Trinidad, it's Tobago, so this is close to my heart and close to home for me, the culture that she's talking about. So I really appreciated what I've heard so far. I really love the part of the presentation I've been able to hear.
Great. Wow. Well, good. We're glad to have you, Carlos. And have you been to Cuba before?
No, I have not.
Okay.
But Caribbean culture kind of permeates through that entire region. You know, we consider them part of our Caribbean culture, as we do Panama, Central America, and even as far away as some of the parts of South America, like Venezuela, because it's very close to us. So we adopt them.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's their neighbors, and there's a lot of commonality and a lot of shared history, I think. So that's great. Well, glad to have you here. I would like to introduce a very important person. Belkis Talavera is Jannelle's mom, and Belkis is also a longtime supporter and volunteer of Silver Spring Town Center.
Hi,
Hello,
Mom.
Belkis. You're muted, so you just have to unmute. You want to say hello?
Thank you so much, Lisa. You're very kind, and it's a beautiful presentation. It's not because she's my daughter, but
no, I agree.
I love also Cuba, and I love their music, their art, their people. I mean, it's just beautiful.
Right. And what's your experience with Cuba? When were you there?
I've been there like 5 times already. Traveling with Jannelle, yeah. Every time that she goes, I said, "Can I go, please?"
Right, she's a great connection. Jannelle, can you tell us about traveling to Cuba and what that entails? Like if you were to go with Groove. Great to see you, Belkis.
Oh, nice to see you, Lisa.
So, that's really big, because my mom usually does these videos usually does Zoom with her video off. So it's a big deal for us to see her face. That's so funny. But yes, traveling to Cuba. So November the 8th, they are supposedly opening up the airports in Cuba for international travel. Now, I say that a little bit incorrectly, because Canadians have been traveling recently, but it hasn't been a worldwide thing. So now the airports are going to open for American and European travel. So that's the way to put it correctly. At this point, I think that I wouldn't travel. I would give it a couple of months. I would not travel anytime soon because I still think that there is food scarcity that our tourism may still affect adversely. So we might want to wait a little bit and just see how their opening plays out. I would say that around maybe February, March, or April, people can start looking at going down again. I most certainly will start taking groups again around that time. And I'm more than happy to have you guys come along with us and experience, the sights, sounds, and culture, the people for yourself. As far as how to travel, so there are still 12 categories that you are allowed to travel under. You are allowed to travel under the category that is called support for the Cuban people. You are also allowed to travel as a mission, on a mission to basically with a church or some sort of organization that gives back. So if you travel with me, you would fall under those two categories. And there are other categories as well. If you're a journalist, you can travel. If you're going to do like a special performance or, something artistic, you can also travel in that way. And then there are other options as well.
Great. Well, I know Riamberto has traveled many times. Riamberto, do you have any
Yeah,
travel
actually, Jannelle, you hit the nail on the head. I totally agree with you. We were planning to go between Christmas and New Year's a few months ago, and it's just and you mentioned something that I want to clarify that it's what you intended. To go to Cuba at the moment, the scarcity is at a point where tourism sucks some of that, and so there's the thing of it's not the time, and there are other issues going on at the moment that including a major artist event, the biennial, that is caught up in the politics of many artists not participating this year because of the July 11th protest that will potentially happen again November 15th. So it's complicated. It is impossible to talk about Cuba. And if you didn't do it, Jannelle, I will, without making the plea to everyone on this call to do what they can to express a firm opposition to the United States embargo on Cuba, and that changing that would help the situation, regardless of what you may hear in other circles.
You and I are on the same page, Riamberto, so we're good.
Okay.
We're good.
So I'm sorry. I didn't know if you were going to say it, but I just did.
It's all right.
Thank you so much, Riamberto. Always good to see you. All right. Well, I think that about does it for our time. It was a wonderful program, Jannelle. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And what is your
I really
website?
appreciate you inviting me to do this, also because it really forced me to think about and try to make sense of everything that I experienced in all of this time. Like I said, and I really mean that my first trip really was the beginning of a different phase in my life, one that really gave my talent and my work purpose. And I think that, we're lucky if we're able to do what it is that we love. But then there's always, more. And what I was missing was the service aspect. And Cuba gave me that. And so I am forever grateful, for that opportunity and for everyone that assisted along the way. And yeah, it really changed my life for the better. And I think that a lot of people that go down to Cuba, they can't help but walk away reprioritizing and reflecting about their own lives.
Right, and with each visit, I imagine your ties to Cuba are just getting stronger and
Absolutely,
stronger. And
absolutely. I mean, now, and then now, you know, I have family there because I married into a Cuban family. And so, you know, it's important for me to know that they're okay. And I think about all of the dance instructors and all of the friends that I made along the way. And absolutely, you worry about them, and you know, you know what's wild? I'm just going to share this really quickly because I kind of laugh at myself at how ridiculous it was. But when I said, like I said, the last time that I went to Cuba was March 13th. And that's when we landed here at the airport. My husband was in tow, and this was when everything was just going crazy. And there was the toilet paper you couldn't find, and scarcity of all types of paper and cleaning goods. And I remember looking at these empty shelves at the grocery store, and tears came down my eyes because I was like, oh my God, what's going on? And my husband looks at me and he goes, what are you crying about? You see this all the time. And I was like, I know, but I've never seen it here. And it was one of those like ding moments, you know, where you say, wow, it's one thing to see it and experience it as a tourist, but then when you have to live even a teensy bit of what life is really like over there, it becomes really, really real. So.
And were they as affected as the rest of the hemisphere with COVID? Or did they not get as affected because there's less travel? No, they were very affected.
It was really bad because there were still, you know, they were taking in cruise ships that were stranded, that weren't able to get into certain countries because people were affected and borders were closed off to them. And, you know, the Cuban government was like, oh, come here. And then all of these people getting off of these ships with COVID, you know, eventually this started to snowball, and, you know, it was just.
Just if I may, Jannelle, just real quick, and if it's TMI, Lisa cut me off. Cuba did develop their independent vaccines, and they started also a month ago vaccinating children with their vaccines.
This is true.
And it's apparently their vaccine, every indication is that it works. And however, the WHO has not approved their vaccines. So in the countries that require vaccination passports, if you will, the Cubans will not qualify because they're vaccinated with a non-WHO approved vaccine. So it gets into a big international mess. But the point is that their vaccine is working. COVID has been hell throughout Cuba. And they, like we all hope here as well, that we've seen the worst, but it's still a precarious situation.
Absolutely.
I have a dying question, or maybe that's the wrong word. I just want to know if your husband is a dancer. Is he all? No.
He is an incredible musician. He can play anything, but he cannot move those feet. And I hope he's hiding back there and he didn't hear what I just said.
So he can accompany you. All right.
So, you know, it's actually the perfect match, right? He's a musician, I'm the dancer, and that's how it works. I can't play anything for you either, so it balances out.
Oh, that's just great. How did you meet?
Oh, I mean, it's the typical story. I was out and about, and I think that at this point in the trip, I was feeling a little bit kind of, you know, homesick, because I guess that happens every now and then. And I was going to stay in, and I remember it being a Friday night, and I just said, wait, what am I doing? It's Friday night in Havana. Like, I'm not going to stay in, I'm going to go out. And the moment that I went out, I see this really cute guy with his, you know, beard and his guitar in hand, and, you know, the rest is history. It was like a first date that lasted the rest of my trip.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thanks for that sweet story. And thanks for a really wonderful evening.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad I was able to share it with you guys.
Roseanne, you'll have to invite Jannelle to speak to your Spanish class at Montgomery
I would
College.
love to.
Montgomery College, so perhaps maybe you'll come in and talk to my students.
Woohoo, I can do that.
No, you can. I just previewed it, so thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing it with your students. Okay, well, this has been a wonderful time, Jannelle, and I thank you again so much. Thank you for a wonderful presentation and for being a
Absolutely.
new board member with us.
Oh, yay.
We're so happy to have you.
Thank
And,
you.
yeah.
And Roberto, you and I got to chat offline.
Yeah. I can connect you guys.
We will certainly do that. And thank you, Lisa, for pulling this together. I need to be more present in the other beautiful ones that you do. But this was wonderful. Thank you.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, okay. Well, thank you again, Jannelle, and to everyone for joining us. And we hope to see you next time.
Thank you, Lisa, so much.
Get
That's
some
great.
rest, everyone.
Thanks for a
Great.
wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank
Ciao, Lisa. Thank you.
Bye, Jannelle. Ciao.
you. Ciao.
Bye-bye.